As Frank Zappa has to say about books, so many books but so little time. Today here I am to be sharing with you 10 such books which you need to be reading before you die. So without further delay, let's dive into the video. Hello everyone, thanks so much for watching ATP, that is Among the Pages, where I talk about the books and the content written among their pages. Well, if you're for the first time in here, then this is Achut Murari and I'm a medico plus a poet, and I talk about the books and personal development tips over this channel. So make sure you are subscribing to my channel for more such bookish content. So without further delay, let's get started. As we have got a whole bunch of books and a whole range of genres, I basically have selected the 10 genres out of all of them, and this is only one set of books which I feel must be read before you die. But there are many more such videos which I'll be posting on my channel, because there are many books which I can't even mention in here. So the first 10 genres which I have selected is obviously fiction, fantasy, non-fictions, self-help books, and then I have crime thrillers. Non-fiction books has biographies and self-help books, and there is romance, and there is humor, and there is horror stories. So without further delay, we are going to the first section. Despite me being an ardent fiction lover, I'll be mentioning non-fiction in here first, because I feel they are the most influential books which are ever there on the markets. Classified the non-fictions into biographies and self-help books, and out of the biographies, I have come across this great book, that is My Childhood Days, or it is called The Best Days of My Life, and that is by Sharda Dubey. So this book is, I call this book as a biography within a biography, or maybe a whole collection of biographies, because this book covers all the childhood memories of great influential people who have ever walked on this earth, such as Mahatma Gandhi, Kapil Sibal, J.K. Rowling, Swami Vivekananda, Albert Einstein, there is Da Vinci, there is Pablo Picasso, and there are many more great people. There is Aristotle, there is Horace, and who not. So reading this book, you can actually understand what made these people really great, and you can easily get a greater glimpse of their life and their blissful childhood. So I feel this book is such a great one, and I have special interest and special bond with this book, because this is the first non-fiction book which I read in my life, and it was gifted by my mother on my birthday of my class 3rd, and I ardently am in love with this. So this has to be on the top-notch list of this video. Now coming to the self-help books, I have Midnight Library by Matt Haig. You might be wondering why this book is present in this list as a non-fiction, because this book has won the Goodreads Golden Awards for the category of fiction in year 2020. So you might be still wondering why I would have added this in the non-fiction, that to self-help book. But despite of having so many self-help books out in the market, just in our piles, I feel the Midnight Library is no less than a great self-help book. I have not even annotated this book, and the only reason that each line which you read in this book is a potent great lesson which you can incorporate into your life. And I have actually noted down most of the important lines from this book into a separate notebook, because I can't even annotate, because it might look really fussy. So I think the Midnight Library by Matt Haig is such a great read, because Matt Haig as an author has undergone depression. He has felt very low many a times in his life, and all these have made him to write such a great book with a lot of life experiences and also self-help content into that. So I highly suggest you to be reading this book, and obviously this is gonna be the best read, and you can count yourself as a great fiction lover after reading this book, because this book is all about a library which you will find after you are going to die. I would not say the spoilers or the story, because it is present already over my channel. Now moving on to my favorite genre, that is fiction. So basically I have considered two subdivisions in fiction, and that one of them is historical fiction and the other one is science fiction. Only considering the fiction aspect, I would always suggest The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy has to be on your list. You need to read this book before you die. If not, it is completely, like, I feel that it is that worth. You need to read this book before you die. It is a must. I have spoken about this book many times on this video, so I would drop the time amount which I will provide to this book. So this is to be on the fiction. Now coming to the subdivision, that is the historical fiction. I feel there are many great books, such as the Book Thief by Mark Zuzak. I have not added that book over this video, because somewhere I felt there are many more books which I need to be giving more concentration upon than the Book Thief, which is already mostly spread out throughout the book lovers. So the book which I will be presenting is Enigma, and I think that is to be the greatest book which I have ever read, and it is written by Robert Harris, and it is titled as a #1 bestseller. I was skeptical about when I was speaking this book about Enigma, because this is all about when a cryptographer actually decodes the enigmatic codes they have received from the Germany, and they soon find out they are waging a war. And the whole scenario is set in World War II, in the Nazi time, and there is a lot of adventure, there is a lot of crime, there is a lot of bloodshed, there is a lot of mind twist and mind bending aspects going on in this book. So I somewhere feel Enigma has to be getting that worthwhile position as a great a historical fiction book which you need to be reading before you die. And as we have been speaking about science fiction, there are indeed a plethora of science fiction books one can ever find over the market. And I have especially made a separate video for all the science fiction books, especially which are suggested by the great Tesla CEO Elon Musk. But still, I feel somewhere The Eyes of Darkness by Dean Koontz has to be grabbing this place over the best science fiction book which you need to be reading before you die. I have read this book when there was this COVID pandemic, and I came to know that Dean Koontz has already predicted a virus from Wuhan, and in a book which was published way back in 1969 or 1970. And I was skeptical before reading this book, but I absolutely loved. Though this book has some of the supernatural things going on in that, such as mind communication or teleportation, but I can completely expect that as a part of science, and I can feel that Dean Koontz's The Eyes of Darkness has to be on this list of the greatest science fiction book. I have made a review of this book over my channel, which I'll be tagging over there so that you can check it super soon. Now coming to my most favorite genre, that is fantasy. There are a plethora of greatest fantasy books. There is Lord of Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I think that book is such a great thing that which we cannot even add into this video, and I feel worthless to be even talking about that book. And we have, of course, the most selling novel ever, and that is the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. It always has to be there on this list. But somewhere I feel above both of them might be The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini, that is Eragon, Eldest and Brysinger, somehow are actually more enticing than any fantasy book I have read till date. Despite they have a lot of content about the dragons, there are many cliche phrases and there are many cliche content in that, but still I can especially love every bit of Brysinger because it brings out a whole new world called Allegatia, and each and every bit of this world feels much better. There are books by Cassandra Clare, there are books by many authors who have written about fantasy, but I still think that a 17-year-old author called Christopher Paolini can actually write such a great trilogy which I can't even put down off my mind. So I think these books need to be on the list of best fantasy books you need to be reading before you die. Now we are moving to the next genre, that is classics. Well, basically out of classics we have one as a classic and one is a graphic novel classics. What is a classic? Basically it is loved by everyone, but it is also hated by everyone. Why I would propel this ideology is classic is something which is supposed to be loved by everyone, but all of them might not be loving that. There are infinite number of great classics about whom I will be making a separate video, but still somewhere or the other thing is I feel this book has to be on this list, and that is Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe. I read this book in my class 3. Well, I had a chapter in my English literature about Robinson Crusoe, which was a short story about a page. But I immediately fell in love with the whole story of Robinson Crusoe that I had to pick this book up from a book fair, which I will tag in here or there about hauling. And I absolutely love every bit of this book. The language is so easy in that, the vocabulary is so easy in that, and the navigation feels so straight and so linear fashion that you can actually understand what the author is trying to propel before us. So I think Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe has to be on this list forever. And as we have been speaking about the greatest graphic novels, I always speak about the Chronicles of Narnia. I guess I was lucky enough to be getting a graphic novel, especially of this book, such as these are the small illustrations which are there over this book. I got this from a second-hand thrift store around my medical college, but somehow I am lucky to be finding them. You might find it on Amazon pretty easily, and there are much more better graphics of this book. So I have considered the greatest graphic novel of the Chronicles of Narnia has to be the greatest graphic novel I have read till date, and also the best book which you would read before you die. I know I have been pronouncing that you die, but someday I feel that there are a lot of books which you need to be mentioning before you even think of calling yourself a bookworm. Now coming to the classical genre, that is romance, into which I am not at all into. I have read almost 0 to 2 books out of romance. Somewhere Remember Me by Sophie Kinsella has to be on this list because this was the only book which I read out of romance by Sophie Kinsella. But this book absolutely stabbed my heart with a lot of emotional scenes and a lot of romance, which was not cliche, and I felt that this book has to be there on this list. Now moving on to the next classic genre, that is detective series. Out of the detective and mystery genre, I feel Alistair MacLean's When Eight Bells Toll has to be on this list. That is like a stunning book which one can ever read. I was in awe to know the fact that a person can actually write one such great book which actually feels like a motion picture appearing right before your eyes when you're trying to read that. So you cannot try to miss any book by Alistair MacLean. So you can always find, you would always find this book being held by the heroine in this movie called Aradhana, in the very famous song Mere Sapno Ki Rani Kab Aayegi Tu. And in that song, the heroine in the toy train of Darjeeling actually holds this book, and that is When Eight Bells Toll by Alistair MacLean. And you just cannot miss this book at all costs. You just cannot miss this book. You cannot miss this book. Okay, the next classical genre, that is horror, which I am not into. I have read almost 0 books out of horror, but I have heard somewhere that the 6th pan books are a whole set of books which are having very gory stories about fear, about rage, and there's a lot of horror. There's about dark thing going on. So I feel that out of horror, 6th pan books supposed to be there on this list. I have read only a half book out of all the series, and I was into that though, but somewhere I felt that horror was not at all my genre. I hate being feared. I hate fearing. So I did not continue reading that book. Now coming to the another most important genre, that is thriller. There are about millions of books in the market which are the best thriller books, but something which caught my attention and I feel that everyone must be reading is by Gil Flynn's The Gone Girl. Of course, this is the most famous book. I know everyone knows about this. I have read about 3/4 of this book and I'm absolutely loving that. I just cannot put this book out of my mind. That is why I think this book must be there on this list. This has to be there on this. This is addictive. You can even fall. This is more addictive than any sort of coffee which you drink in the early mornings. So please go ahead with The Gone Girl by Flynn. I call him simply Flynn because Gillian Flynn is, I can't pronounce him perfectly, so I just call it Flynn. This is a little thick book, I accept that, but still it goes stunningly. Unfortunately I do not have the the counterparts. I have read them as ebooks, so let's go ahead with that. So that's all guys. These are the 10 books which I felt you must be reading at least once in your lifetime, or you can consider before you die. So these 10 books out of my favorite genres, I have listed them out, but you are absolutely free to be commenting down below the books which you love, the genres which you think should be added, and please mention the corresponding books so that I can add them in the next video which I'll be making as a part 2. And this is gonna be a series, so I know it's gonna be stretched for so long. So till the next video, bye bye, thank you.